Hi biology students, this is Mrs. Miller, and today we're going to be working on a new unit in biology, which is the molecules of life, and we're going to be on section 1, which is going to cover carbon compounds and carbohydrates. Today we're going to start by talking about what is an organic compound. So an organic compound is something that's really important for us to know and to understand throughout this entire unit. So there are many types of compounds that exist in the world, but they all fall into two categories. And those two categories are either organic or inorganic. To be organic, you have to have both carbon and hydrogen. So here we have a nice example of an organic compound. We have something with carbon and lots of little hydrogens. As long as there's at least one carbon and at least one hydrogen, we consider it to be organic. However, if it's inorganic, it does not contain both carbon and hydrogen. So when I look at something like water down here, water has the hydrogen, but because it doesn't also have the carbon, we consider it to be inorganic. So organic has carbon and hydrogen. Inorganic either has neither or is missing one of them. So in this unit, we're specifically going to be looking at organic compounds. Throughout this unit, we're going to be studying 4 organic molecules of life, and what we're going to be looking at are our carbohydrates, our proteins, lipids, and nucleic acids. At the beginning of this video, I was really talking about organic versus inorganic. So remember, organic means it has carbon and hydrogen. So why is carbon the special thing here? Well, carbon is so special because it has only 4 valence electrons and it can make 4 bonds. So here I have a Lewis structure of carbon and we have 1, 2, 3, 4 valence electrons, and that means that it wants 4 more. Because it wants 4 more and it's a non-metal, it's going to be able to form some very strong covalent compounds, which we then represent like lines, which we learned in the last unit. They can form single bonds, so we just see 1 line between them, double bonds, where we see 2 lines, or even triple bonds, where we can see 3 lines there. So bonds can bond with other carbon to form chains, or it can even form rings, which we'll talk about more when we get to our carbohydrates. I think what you guys are all going to notice about this particular unit is the fact that we're really going to be vocab heavy. So there are some more words we want you guys to know to help you to understand what we're talking about. So as we talk about our molecules of life, again, proteins, lipids, carbohydrates, and nucleic acids, we're going to break those down into something called monomers and another that's called a polymer. So it's all about the prefixes here because the prefix describes the size. When we talk mono means 1. So 1 of these. Like if someone has a monobrow, it means that they have 1 brow. Sometimes we say that's a unibrow, right? Di, so that means it has 2 sides to it, or it has 2 parts that make it up. And then poly means many. So we have many pieces that are coming together to make a polymer. And then the term mer means a subunit or molecule. So when I put those together, monomer, 1 subunit, dimer, 2 subunits, polymer, many subunits. So this slide goes over what we just saw with the previous slide, monomers being a single molecule or subunit, dimer, 2 or more, polymer, large. But I like the picture on here. So it's our Legos. So I can see with a monomer, it would be like one of these would be a monomer. So this structure right there, that would be a monomer. If I wanted a dimer, I would have to put 2 of them together. But as soon as I get 3 or more, now I have polymers. So I just like that we can use the Legos to kind of help us see that. Mono 1, di would be 2. Both of these are polymers because it's 3 or more. Today what we're really going to focus on, instead of focusing on all 4 of the molecules of life, is we're just going to focus on carbohydrates. So you guys should write this whole thing somewhere into your notes, because what we're going to be looking at is the molecule of life, what is the monomer, the polymer, and the common use within our bodies. So the molecule of life that we're first working with are carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are also sometimes referred to as saccharides, so that's kind of a hard term to say, saccharides, or we call these things sugars. So a lot of us really like carbohydrates, and they have these sugars that give us energy. So when we talk about the monomers, we are going to call them monosaccharides, and that makes sense. Mono means one, saccharide means sugar, so single sugar or one sugar is the monomer, so that makes perfect sense. The polymer makes sense again. Polysaccharide. Poly means many, saccharide means sugar. We break that down and we get many sugars. So we take monosaccharides and we attach them together to make polysaccharides, and the use of our carbohydrates or our sugars are all of our quick energies. So sometimes you may hear that a person is going to carbo load before they go on and run a marathon or something. So they're probably eating lots of breads and pastas and things, and that's because that's where they're going to get their quick energy from. And that's again because carbs are our main energy source for both plants and animals. It's going to be important that you guys understand the structure of carbohydrates as well. So first off, when we talk carbohydrates, they are composed of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen most of the time. So when I'm looking at that, I quickly see I have carbon, I also see I have hydrogen, therefore I know that this is going to be organic, carbon and hydrogen. We have a generic formula for these, CnH2nOn, and all these N's mean is like if I said you only have to fill it in with a number. So let's say I said it was 6. So I would say C6, like here. H, 2 times 6 is 12. And then ON, which is 6. So C6H12O6 would be glucose in this case. The cool part about carbohydrates is they can be stored as large molecules for later use. So what we can see here is this nice ring structure that we get with a carbohydrate. So we see lots of bonds with these straight lines with oxygen and hydrogen, and because we have carbon and hydrogen, we know it's organic. There are times where we really need to be able to store this quick energy so we can have a little bit of energy later on. So plants and animals are going to store this energy a little bit different. So in animals, we are going to store excess sugar as glycogen in the liver. So when we run out of all of our quick energy, we're going to start to break down this glycogen in a liver. That's why sometimes you might hear doctors getting worried about people having a fatty liver, and that's because they're having too much sugar in their diet and they're storing way too much glycogen in that liver, so that can be unhealthy. Plants, on the other hand, plants don't have livers, so where do they store all of their excess carbohydrates? Well, they store it as the sugar that they call starch, and they're going to hold it in their cell walls. So we can see the cell wall is kind of like this whitish material, white yellow I guess, and that's where all those excess sugars are going to go, and that's in the cell walls. We always are going to start off with our monosaccharides, and again, mono means one, saccharide means sugar, so one sugar are single sugar molecules. Some common monosaccharides that you guys might know are things like glucose, fructose, galactose, but we can see all three of them here. You can see that they look really, really similar overall, with just a couple small differences here and there between all three. So what we can do is we can take two monosaccharides like glucose and fructose, and we can combine them to form a disaccharide. Remember, di means two, saccharide means sugar, so two sugars. And we can do this through a process called polymerization. So polymerization is creating large molecules by adding monomers. So poly, again, means many, mer, subunits, ization, it's saying that we're going to take many subunits and connect them. So it's all about breaking down these words in this unit. So how do we go about polymerizing these monosaccharides and building them up into bigger disaccharides or even bigger polysaccharides? We use a process called dehydration synthesis, and this is a process where two molecules can be joined together. What we're going to do is we're going to take an OH or hydroxide group from one monomer and combine it with a hydrogen from another monomer. And when we do that, we're going to combine it to form water. So I can see monomer 1, monomer 2. On one side, I'm going to take off an OH. On the other side, I'm taking off an H. That allows them to be connected here, and I get some water out of it. Anytime we take water out of something, we say we dehydrate it. Just like if you guys are running around a ton and you're not drinking any water, you become dehydrated because all of your water was taken out. So when you think dehydration synthesis, think about taking water out. So this process can repeat itself and go from a monomer to a polymer actually quite quickly. So I again see my monosaccharide single sugar, and I'm adding another single sugar. I'm going to pull an OH group off one side and an H group off of the other side. When I do that, they're going to stay connected by that O that's left over. So I can see that. Now we have a disaccharide, and I get water out of that because it's a dehydration synthesis reaction. When I do this, I can see that I formed a bond, and every time I have a bond being created, I'm storing energy for later use. So lots of bonds means lots of stored energy. There's also going to be times where we start with a very large subunit of something and we need to break it down. So what we're going to do is we are going to use a different reaction called hydrolysis reaction. Hydrolysis reaction is where a water molecule is split in order to break a bond. So when we break bonds, we're going to release that energy. So a hydrolysis reaction is the opposite of a dehydration synthesis reaction. We can see here I'm starting with a polymer. I'm going to add water, and I'm going to split that water in half. And when I do, I'm going to break this whole structure into one monomer and one dimer. Again, I'm going to take some time and I'm going to break down this word for you. So hydrolysis. Hydrolysis is made out of two words, which is hydro and lysis. Hydro means water. Lysis means to break. So when we go through hydrolysis reaction, we are literally breaking water in half. So it's the opposite of dehydration synthesis, because what we're going to do is we're going to take this water here, we're going to split it in half. One little molecule is going to get one OH group. The other molecule is going to get the H group. So we split the H2O into HO and H. When we break that bond, we get a nice release of energy. So if you start running the mile and you run out of energy quickly, what your body is going to do is it's going to start breaking bonds like this using hydrolysis reaction to release that energy. And this allows us to go from a large molecule to a small molecule. So hydrolysis, large to small. Dehydration synthesis, small to large. If you have any questions, let us know. Otherwise, have a great day.